get to order. This is a special meeting, June 8th, 2022 at 4 p.m. of the Greenfield Public Safety Commission. Chair statement is this meeting is being recorded, videotaped, but not broadcast. If any other persons present are recording, videotaping, or broadcasting this meeting, you must notify the chair at this time.
There is a chat from a constituent, Dawn Morin, says she's recording the meeting.
Right.
But she's also working, so she might not be able to answer. So
okay, so she is recording the meeting. Anyone else? Hearing no one. Okay, roll call. Butch, I'm present. Let's see, Adam.
Here.
Present. And Susan.
here, present.
Present. And Michelle.
Here.
And Rick Clark. Didn't see him. Maybe he'll jump in.
I haven't seen him yet.
No, I didn't see him. He may jump in. He usually does. Okay, so the purpose of the special meeting really is to deal with the budget cuts that the city council has placed on the personnel portion and to a small extent on the operating budget of the police department. I have met with the chief on Monday. We talked about a lot of things. I've talked to the mayor a little bit about stuff. And what we're trying to do, the goal here is to create a recommendation from public safety and the deputy chief on how to proceed in making the cuts in the police department to make them as least destructive to the services to the city of Greenfield and the visit here. I just want to point out that the public safety section or unit is really comprised of, if you think of a three-legged stool and you have the ambulance, the EMS people, and you have the fire department, and you have the police department as the stool, and on top of the stool are the services that those departments, provide for the city and its residents and its visitors. And if you cut off a piece of one of those legs, the other two legs can't support the stool. They don't have the certifications necessary or the budgets or the personnel to take up the slack of the reduction of one of those legs. It doesn't matter whether it's the ambulance or the fire department, police department. And so it's crippled. And that's what we're dealing with. We're dealing with crippled services and one of the legs that support the public safety mission for Greenfield. And so how do we go about achieving that goal is sort of our problem, the chief's problem, and the mayor's problem. So I would like to ask Deputy Chief Gordon if he could share with us some schematics that he's shown me and the mayor previously about his staffing and how the staffing for his department works on a 24-hour basis and how it would be impacted or the ways in which it approach the impact of his staffing. I think previously we've shied away from providing our staffing levels on shifts because it's a strategic thing and we don't like to let people know, where our staffing is and what times of the day the staffing is. But we've gotten to a point now where I think we really have to talk about our staffing and where our staffing is and where we're going to be lax in our staffing and what services that's going to be reduced because of that reduction in staffing. So I would just ask Deputy Chief Gordon if he would sort of lead the conversation along the way with the staffing of the department.
Absolutely, and thank you for your time today and everybody that's present. I appreciate your interest in the police department. I do believe this is a community conversation that we need to have. Although I lead the department, I work for the people of the city of Greenfield. So I really appreciate that everybody is partaking in this conversation. And I do listen to everybody and I hear everybody, what they're saying. And I take all that into account and I read comments that are sent to me and emails that are
recording
sent to me.
in progress.
Oops.
And I take all that to heart. And this is a police department that I love, and it's a city that I love. basically grew up in this town. I've served this town for 33 years. I have children that went to the school in this town, and my home is in this town. So saying all of that, everything that I have to say really does truly come from the heart. I'd like to see if I can share my screen because I have a lot of facts here. Could you, the host has disabled that. Could you allow me to share the screen?
Where would I do that? Let's see. Breakout room, raise your hand, chat, participate. Is where would I do that?
If you
Apps?
hit,
More.
go to more.
Yeah. Live workplace. No, live.
I can't see because I'm not a co-host. Maybe.
Well, one's live on Facebook, live on Workplace by Facebook, live on YouTube, live on Twitter. That's all there is of more. I don't know. Oh,
You're
share
muted,
screen. Try that. Will that work for you? And if I,
Try it one more time.
well, I got the share screen app up. Let's see what share does. Uh-oh.
Yeah.
That wasn't good. How do I get out of that? Try that. Oh, that wasn't good either.
Cool picture.
Yeah, how did I?
Come on. Beautiful. Yeah, screenshot. Make sure now.
Let me see. Let's see. I'm sharing the screen. Stop sharing. Let's see what that does.
Yeah.
That gets me back to here.
They don't know. Like, this is what I do all the time.
New participants.
Ryan, you're not muted. FYI.
Security. Yeah, I don't
Somewhere at the host level, there will be something that you can do to give permission for others to screen share.
Yeah, I can't
don't know
explain
where
it
it
to you
is.
because I'm not a
Take
co-host
the
right now.
host, post, rename, assign, be caption, allow. Let's see, allow. Reports.
Oh, here's a good comment in the chat
Oh,
about how to do this.
and what does it say?
You have to make chief co-host.
Oh, okay.
I don't think you do, but that's a way to do it.
All
Yeah,
right. Let me find
Yeah.
it here.
that's
All
the
right.
easiest way.
More. Make. Let's see. Where is he? I'll find in a second. More. Co-hosts. Yes. Try that. Did that work for you, Chief?
Getting there. Hold on.
Yeah.
It's getting there. Hold on.
Yeah.
All right. Can you see?
We're getting there. Yes.
All right. So hopefully.
Learn something new every day. I just got to get our pictures out of the middle of it. That's all.
Just for everybody's reference, we're making a manual for boards and commission chairs, but it's not done.
All right. Are we ready?
We're ready.
So one of the first things that I think is important is to talk about how we got here. And like I said, I listened to the voices of the representatives of the citizens of Greenfield. I really want to highlight some of the things that they said, because some of the things that they said is we should take in consideration for the type of efforts that we're going to go into the future. For example, Councillor Bottomley stated, as has been shown in comparison to other cities, we spend significantly larger portion of our operational budget on the police force. I'm going to talk about this in upcoming slides about the comparison to the cities and whether I think, are we really looking at the correct cities? Councillor Bottomley thinks that we need to be a catalyst for change, and change is something that it was said over and over and over in that city council meeting. So that's one of the things that we have to look at. And what kind of changes do we want to have? We must use the blunt tool of budget cuts to make meaningful change. Again, the atmosphere is that people want change. And then he moved to cut $1,200,000 from the police department wages and salary lines and cut $100,000 from the expense line. I just want to say that we don't have to make those kind of changes today, but we have to be prepared to move in the future of that type of change if the councilors decide to continue to move in that direction. And again, he said it's abundantly clear that we need major change. It's been a long, long time coming, long before I even moved to Greenfield. Councillor Forgy made mention that there are some decisions that have to be made, and they're not easy ones to make. That is true. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. What kind of changes do that have to be made? And I'll tell you right now, the way I look at it, they're not going to be easy changes to make. These are not changes that I want to have. These are not changes that I want to make. Some people have attacked me over the last couple of weeks saying that I have those choices and I can make those changes, and they're upset about the changes that I've been making. But as Councillor Forgy said, these decisions do have to be made, and they're not easy. And if we're going to transition from an old way of policing to a new way of policing, then we'll need the young blood here, which is absolutely true. It's the young blood that helps us change the culture of the department. But what wasn't really said was, what is that new way of policing? A lot of people are talking about change, but they didn't tell me what kind of change they wanted. So we have to explore that, and that's what I'm asking your help to do. Finance Director Liz Gilman was 100% correct that the counselors have to honor the contract, but have a reduction of force with the available funding, but there'll be significant other expenses associated with the layoffs. What I'm dealing with right now is the $425,000 worth of cuts. I don't really know what those significant other expenses associated with those cuts are at this point in time. So we're just going to focus on that $400,000. But we do have to honor the contract. The contract was fairly negotiated and approved by the city council themselves. So what do we have left? A reduction of force. Councillor Ricketts said, we know. She said, we know that there's going to be all of the lesser folks. So I feel that we're just making a bigger problem because we're just hurting all of those families of all those officers because we're laying off a number of people. And now we have all this unemployment that we're going to have to be dealing on top of that. And not having good response time is not good and is not safe. We're already feeling some of those effects as we start moving into transition. I can't wait until July 1. A lot of people have complained that they didn't affect this budget, but they affected the July 1 budget. But I have to say that this is a transition, that I already have to start taking detectives off the road to fill in some of the patrol positions because we're already underfunded on the first budget. Those detectives also have to start transitioning into getting rid or finalizing their reports, so they can't take on more calls and more reports. So some of the changes have to be made now. I'm going to address some more of those in the future, but not having good response time is not good and it's not safe. Councillor Ricketts is 100% correct about that. Councillor Jarvis said, I have elderly neighbors in my neighborhood. One of them said to me the other night, what do I do at 2 o'clock in the morning when someone is going to break into my house? Who am I going to get? These patrols will be affected by the cuts. Will probably be the patrols that work midnight to 7. Those are the discussions we're going to have today. My neighbor has a point, he said. Who will respond? The state police? I can already tell you, I've talked to the state police and they will respond to life and death emergencies only. Now, somebody breaking into a house is the life or death emergency, but there's a lot of other things like alarms, loud noise complaints, and all the other things that we do over the midnight shift that they are unable to respond and they won't respond to. They've already denied service to the city of Greenfield because we've already requested their services. Again, they will be here for life or death emergencies. I want to emphasize that. Everything is going to be to our core function of saving lives. We will not allow any of that to suffer as long as we are able to respond. And the state police will respond, and Montague will respond, and Deerfield will respond. But those are the life and death emergencies. These are the concerns. These are the lives we're talking about, Councillor Jarvis said. He's absolutely right. Councillor Gilmore said that the community has been asking for changes for as long as I've been a councillor and probably longer. What kind of changes? We'll talk about that. I'd love to meet with her and discuss these changes too. This is a problem that has been festering in Greenfield longer than I lived here, and the community is asking us to do something, and that something may be very, very painful, but I still think we need to do something. She acknowledges that these cuts are going to be very, very painful to the town people, but these are the cuts that they decided to make. Councilor Lipinski stated, don't talk to me about break-ins. The police are the break-ins. And I moved to amend the motion to $2 million from the police budget. The police are not entitled to our money. They work for us, and we get to decide how many of them we need. I want you to remember that this is not my decision. This is not the mayor's decision. This decision lies in the hands of the council. And as Councilor Lipinski said, we get to decide how many of them we need, and they did. If someone is playing music on their front porch and they have a neighbor that doesn't like it, 7 o'clock on a Friday afternoon in the middle of summer, they have a right to be left alone. I've been to many, many loud noise complaints, and we've resolved most of them. But the ones that we can't resolve are ended up in the hands of the people themselves. And it usually involves a future assault and battery. So the loud noise complaints that we do actually solve future assaults. Councilor Lipinski stated, if I just broke up with my ex and I and my ex want to get me in trouble so they can come in and take all my furniture, I need to be left alone. I'm not sure what he's referring to. Is he stating that the police department shouldn't go to domestic assaults or domestic abuses? Or if somebody is calling the police for help for a domestic, should we question them over the phone? How many questions should we ask? What kind of questions should we ask before we send officers to that house? How long should we delay that response? It's not enough to say that we should reallocate. It's not enough to say that we should get rid of the bad apples. We need to be left alone in this town and have the cops and the rest of them to stop minding our business. Is this really what we want? When people call for help, do we really want to say, sorry, it's your business and you want to be left alone? Maybe it is. Maybe it isn't. But this is the conversation that we should have. This is very troubling. He also made mention of a call where one of his tenants, he accused us of breaking into his house because his tenant's girlfriend called and said that the tenant was suicidal. And we responded, and our officers determined that that tenant was suicidal, and they were brought to the hospital. Now, that was over the midnight shift. During the days, we would actually have clinicians in our cruisers that would respond, and we'd be able to settle that. But we don't have the funding for 24-hour counselors on our co-response program. So this happened overnight. So the only thing that the officer could do is call an ambulance and send them to the hospital and let the hospital decide whether that person's suicidal or not. Police officers are not qualified for that. So we did that. And then the Councilor Lapiansky stated that the next day he did attempt suicide. So I guess the officers were correct in their assessment. But he wants us to leave them alone. I've been to houses where people have hung themselves. I've been to houses where children have hung themselves. How much should we be leaving people alone when they're going to kill themselves? I guess Councilor Lipinski will need to define that a little bit better. Councilor Bullock says there's very real data that shows our police department is too high. We're going to talk about some of that data because I did some data research myself. The other towns that were used as comparisons, she said, spending per capita is Amherst, East Hampton, Northampton, North Adams. We spend more than all of them, which is not wrong, but there's probably reasons why. We'll talk about that. When we look at the pie, now that statement, look at the pie. I know what pie she's talking about. I'm going to present that pie later on. I just want you to remember that as we go through this quote. When we look at the pie of what Greenfield Police responds to, a lot of it isn't police business, which we need someone in our community to respond to these things, right? She's admitting that there's nobody else. So she doesn't want the police response and she doesn't want anybody else. Maybe she does want somebody else to respond. I don't want to say that for her. She probably does want somebody else to respond, but we have nothing in place for that right now. And she knows that. Councilor Bullock stated, but some of the things I think we need to address here, we're paying for body camera stipends. That's not paying for the body cameras, that's paying for the officers to wear the body cameras, whether it's part of their job or not. I can tell you right now, it's not part of their job. They've never been asked to wear body cameras. It's not a job expectation. If the city wants them to wear body cameras, they have to negotiate for that. They did with the mayor, fairly. They decided to take a 0% COLA and take a 2% body stipend. It's basically the same as a 2% COLA like most other departments got. But they didn't call it a COLA, they called it a body camera stipend to show their other union members that they were getting paid to do something that is not their job, but will become their job. And that body camera and stipend will only last 2 years, and it's revolved into their pay because eventually it will become part of their job. But right now, it's not. In a My Turn article, she stated that the presented budget had stipends for detectives and a canine stipend beyond base pay. Notice that she had problems with the canine stipend and detectives. And like I said, I listened to the counselors. So later that day, I announced that I was going to stop the canine stipend and cancel the canine, because a canine stipend is actually something that we pay because the officer does work with their canine. It's in lieu of overtime. When they're at their house, they have to feed the canine, they have to bathe the canine, they have to exercise the canine. They spend about an hour a day working with their canines off the job. The Garcia Act, which is a FLSA standard, mandates us to give all canine officers a stipend. It's federal law. We have no choice. So notice that Councilor Bullock had those concerns. I canceled the canine stipend. I only did it because she put it in the article. And also, I told the detectives that we won't be able to use them as detectives as well, starting July 1. Now, the reason why I did it in June, the canine in June, instead of July 1, is because I truly felt that our community would support our canine unit. And that with the help of the community, I would be able to gather enough funding to pay for that dog. We're not quite there yet. We're just under $6,000 of the $7,000 that we need. But the community has stepped up. People have donated several thousands of dollars apiece to make sure that that canine program exists. That's how important it is to them. Councilor Bullock also stated that's when you get court cases, when certain people get more money in one department in a similar and same role as other people aren't. So if you look at what our teachers are making versus a patrolman, it's significantly different. And she's right. She's right. I went to the contract. The teacher's top salary is $80,369. The fire's top salary, which I actually used because although she didn't point out that the fire department in her quote, she said this in a similar role in the similar role is closer to the fire department. The fire department's top salary is $74,563.32, and a police officer's top salary is $69,118.40. Now, I didn't include stipends in this. So somebody's going to be able to point out that some officers do make more than that top salary. But I also do want to point out that the teachers get stipends and the fire department gets stipends as well. But I'm not here to compete with those two departments because really there's no comparison. We do completely different work. The fire department and police department, both public safety agencies, I get that. But we certainly do different type of work. And I'm not going to pit one department against another. I just wanted to answer that one question. Many city councilors have been using comparisons such as what is being discussed by a group called the People's Budget of Greenfield. And I respect the People's Budget of Greenfield. I've been following them for several years. Some of the things that they say, we have good points. We're going to talk about the Coots program. I kind of like it. I think we should explore that more in depth. But I do have, they are a biased, they're a biased group. And they are trying to sell one message, and that is to cut $1 million from the police department. They did this way before the verdict. This is about 2 years old of them asking for $1 million cut. So it was definitely, they were definitely there the last year. So this has nothing to do with the verdict. Matter of fact, I did read a couple of My Turn articles in the paper where they came out right out and said this has nothing to do with the verdict. So, but anyways, I respect them. I read them. You know, it's my job to listen to people. So I do listen to them. But they used, if you noticed here, they used the same cities and towns that the counselors use. So it's pretty obvious that the counselors are getting their information from this group. I don't have a problem with that. Again, they should be listening to their people. But they're using Amherst, East Hampton, North Adams, Northampton, Greenfield. And they stated that they want us to be more like East Hampton that has $160 per capita, which means that we have to cut $1 million off the mayor's 2023 GPD budget. And if anybody wants to read more about the People's Budget of Greenfield, the website's on the screen. And I encourage people to read it. Well, let's talk about some comparisons. So comparisons versus Greenfield versus North Adams. North Adams has a much higher crime rate. The crime rate per 1,000 residents for North Adams is 30 violent crimes per 1,000 residents. In Greenfield's is only 21. We do a good job. Not a great job. We could do better. I'm always striving to do better, but we do a good job. East Hampton comparisons. This is a little bit more in depth. This East Hampton and Amherst is a little bit more in depth because they put their numbers out, and I was able to find the numbers on the website and compare our numbers with their numbers. Now, our numbers and their numbers are not going to be exact because everybody has a little bit of a different way of entering information into computers. This is a good snapshot. East Hampton has reported calls of services 18,402, where Greenfield has 27,611. Now, I previously said 32,000. I was using pre-COVID numbers when I came up with that. I wasn't prepared. I'm a little bit more prepared today. So our 2021 numbers is 27,611. That's 50% more calls that Greenfield officers do than East Hampton. Can't compare. Arrests. East Hampton has 247. Greenfield has 349. That's 41% more arrests. And our arrests are coming down. And people are criticizing, Councilor Bullock has criticized our arrest numbers as not being high enough, but we've been working really hard over the last year for jail diversion, last 10 years, about jail diversion and lowering our arrest numbers. And also shows that crime is going down. But we still have 41% more arrests than East Hampton does. Can't compare these two agencies. Summonses, we deliver 200, East Hampton does 134, we do 284. That's 112% more summonses. Because you know what? We don't arrest as many people anymore because we believe that a summons is a better route. Unless they're a violent crime or if there's an identity issue, we try to summons people because it's more comfortable to do that for them and for us. Reportable accidents in the city. East Hampton has 245. We have 388. That's a 58% increase. 58% more accidents in town. We don't create accidents. They just happen. Felonies. East Hampton has 171. We have 516. That's 202% more felonies that happen in town. Restraining orders, 70% versus 334. That's a 377% increase. Citation issues. We've been getting criticized a lot by a group called Everything Greenfield that we don't give enough citations. Well, I can tell you, we do 210% more citations than East Hampton, of which we're being compared to. And we do 1,424 citations over the course of a year. Despondent individuals, suicide individuals. Now here, I'm going to say I believe the numbers are probably wrong because I would hate to find it hard to believe that we do a 16,083%. I mean, it's a 1,683% increase in despondent people, but I'm not surprised it's much higher because of the type of services that we have in town. Unattended deaths, again, something we don't create in the city, but we have to respond to them all. East Hampton had 23, Greenfield had 41. That's a 78% increase. Now, I also want to point out that in 2021, East Hampton had 29 full-time police officers and 10 part-time police officers. Greenfield only has 34 full-time police officers, and we have 0 part-time officers. We have 17% more officers, but we're handling 50% more calls. People should applaud our officers. They're doing more with less. And if anybody wants to check my numbers, there's the website right there that they can check the numbers. East Hampton comparison, People's Budget reports that East Hampton spent $160 per capita on police on 2022. But in FY23, I'm sorry, that should have read police in 2021, my fault. But in FY23, they budgeted for $3,071,000. They have 16,000 residents, which is $191 per capita, not 160 like they're trying to compare us to. It's much closer to Greenfield FY23 than reported. Again, all the links are below if you want to check those data. And on the bottom, on the bottom of the screen, you can see that is a screenshot from the People's Budget website where they're comparing us to that. And these are the same numbers that Councilor Disorder's using, Councilor Bullock's using. But the fact is the website's there. So let's look at Amherst, because Amherst was also thrown out there. Calls of service for Amherst was 16,632. Greenfield's was 27,611. That's 66% increase. We have a little bit less arrests than the top should say Amherst, not East Hampton right at the top. I apologize about that. We have a little bit less arrests, but we also don't have, 20,000 students that are in our town. Again, it's hard to compare sometimes. Also, it should be noted that Amherst also has a large department that can back them up called UMass. But we don't have anything like that here in Franklin County. Robberies, we have 114% more robberies. We have 58% more accidents, 73% more medical assists, 15% more servable restraining orders. They do write more citations than we do. And again, same thing with this figure here, 1,683% more despondent people. Unattended deaths is a 95% difference between the two towns. In FY23, Amherst had 46 full-time police officers. So people want to compare us to an agency that has 46 police officers. We only have 34 police officers. They have 35% more officers than Greenfield, and we handle 66% more calls of service. Again, our guys do a good job here in Greenfield. I don't think they get enough credit. Police spending per capita. Let's talk about police spending per capita, because this is what they wanted to do, but they compared us to agencies that aren't county seats. Greenfield has a hospital, a jail, courthouse, colleges, methadone clinics, detox, homeless shelters, has DCF, DTA, CSO, service net, respite houses. We have Northern Hope. We have all kinds of other services that these other towns do not have. It's more fair to compare us to a county seat that has these types of services. If you notice on the figures on the right, Northampton has $217 for per capita, compared to Greenfield's $216 per capita. But look at the other agencies, $226, $242, $268, $275, $298, $282, $357, $369, $410, $574 per person. Yes, I know we're not Boston, and I know we're not Springfield, but we are a county seat. And being a county seat has more services, has more things, has more police calls. You can see it in the facts and figures that I use with East Hampton and Amherst alone. Cahoots. I love this program. I love to have it here in Greenfield. I am not opposed to Cahoots whatsoever. I've been watching Cahoots for several years. We started a co-response. Cahoots is a co-response unit. You can see in the picture below. Sometimes they respond without police. Sometimes they do respond with police. They are funded by the police department budget. The Eugene Police Department budget in FY23 is $81.25 million. That's $477 per capita, where Greenfield is only $216 per capita. I can promise you, if you get our spending up to $477 per capita, I will put a Cahoots in. But we're not Eugene, Oregon. Cahoots budget is $820,000 in Eugene, Oregon. That's 1% of the police budget. 1% of the police budget equivalent for us would be $38,000, not $425,000. $38,000. Programs like Cahoots are not funded by cutting from police budgets. They're created by adding to police budgets. The graph shows that the police budget in Eugene, Oregon is going up, not going down. It costs money to have programs. Eugene Police Department responds to 137,000 calls of service a year. Eugene Police Department calls per service is $590 average call per service. Greenfield's cost per service is approximately $135. Cahoots diverts using Eugene, Oregon's own figures, which is listed there on the website. Cahoots diverts 3 to 8% of the calls from police. Great program. I don't mind diverting calls if we had something like Cahoots, and we have calls that we could do that with Cahoots. But best case scenario, using Eugene's own figures, best best case scenario of 8%, we could divert about 2,200 calls. Still leaves us 25,000 calls of service that we need to go to. Another comment from Councillor Bullock. And again, I'm not attacking, I hope nobody takes it as I'm attacking any of these councillors, because I'm not. I'm listening to them. The things on this pie chart, again, we're going to talk about the pie chart that worry me, that I want, that I think, we don't have an alternative for police to respond right now. She admits that. If we cut police services, there is nothing else that is going to be able to use right now. We might be able to build something in the future, but right now we have nothing. Assault and batteries, the charges of property damage and stuff, those are less than 10% of what the police are responding to. That's going to make sense when you see the chart. She follows that up by saying, I would recommend that we cut $477,000 from the salaries, and then on the other side for expenses, she had cut $127,265. That was her amendment. That it didn't get passed, but knowing that we don't have an alternative right now, she still made these recommendations. This is the pie chart that she's talking about. If you notice the assault and batteries, property damage and theft and the unknown, that is what I believe that they're talking about their 10%. It's not exact, but that's what she mentioned, the assault and batteries. And she held this pie chart up during the town council meeting, so I'm pretty sure that this is what she's referring to. But what on this pie chart should police not respond to? Well, first of all, a lot of this stuff we don't code, so I don't really know what's in this pie chart. But should we not respond for general assistance when people call for police and request for police for assistance? Should we not go to civil traffic matters, like I'm assuming is in their car accidents, traffic tickets, speeding complaints? Just don't do those. Hazardous conditions, wires down, I'm assuming, tree branches down, other types of hazardous conditions, maybe needles in the parks. Should we not do those? Procedural paperwork, 2.8%, I got to tell you, our guys just do not take credit for the paperwork that they do, because they do way more than 3% of their time on paperwork. Should they not do paperwork? Alarms going off. This is a good one. We really may need to look into this. Should the police department not respond when a burglar alarm goes off? Civil complaints, restraining orders, summonses, harassment prevention orders, conflict mediation, domestic assault and batteries. Well, I guess assault and batteries would be under the 0.8. I question that number, but should we not try to prevent assault and batteries by doing conflict mediation? I can tell you that this 90% is not covered by Cahoots. Cahoots does 3 to 8% of their calls, probably in the general assistance categories. What do we do though? I think that's important to talk about. So last couple of days, I've gathered up our statistics and let's talk about it. So we do 1,519 911 hangups and silent calls. So if somebody calls the police because they're afraid of an intruder, if somebody calls the police because they're afraid of a domestic abuse situation, and they leave the phone off the hook, do we not respond? How many of those 1,519 are that? Probably not much, but which ones are they? Vehicle crashes, 756 crashes. Do police just not respond to vehicle crashes? This wasn't in the pie chart. Oh, well, it's civil traffic, I guess. Do we just not respond to vehicle crashes? I can tell you last night on my way home, I came across a car accident, happened pretty much right in front of me. I put my blue lights on, I assisted traffic. I called for a police officer. There was no police officers available. They were already on life-threatening calls, both cruisers. 2 simultaneously emergencies that happened in town. They were already tied up. A detective finally came and relieved me, but it took him the amount of time to that the fire department came, the ambulance came, they treated the patient, they put him on the stretcher, and they loaded him into the ambulance before the first police unit, besides myself, showed up. That's not the type of policing we want to give to the cities of Greenfield. Not only that, but if our officers are too tied up doing call to call to call to call, and they can't get the paperwork done, then people aren't going to be able to rent cars. They're not going to be able to get their insurance payments. They're not going to be able to, get their paperwork that they're going to need for all of that. because our officers are too tied up doing the emergency calls. Alarms, 535 alarms in the city of Greenfield. Which ones are real, which ones are not? How do we figure that out before we respond? Should we not respond? Animal cruelty calls, 10 people that we identified were cruel to animals. I didn't see that up on the pie chart. Again, you can hear me there a lot of times. Do we not respond to that? Assaults and threats, there's 240 of them. They talked about that. Citizen request for police assistance, 1,947. Now, here is where I agree that a department like Cahoots could come into play. You know, does a police officer have to go on every single thing that comes through our telephones? No, I don't think we do. I think there's an area for a place like Cahoots. There's an area for a place like clinicians. We've started that type of program. We can't afford it. It's going to take an increase of our budget to put that type of thing in play. And then how many Cahoots do you have and how many hours a week do they do? So does Cahoots work midnight to 7? So how much are we going to fund? In order to have two dispatchers round the clock 7 days a week, and I'm really quickly looking at my budget line items here. I believe it's in the area. Yep, here it is. Hold on a minute. $727,000 to have 2 people around the clock. So that would be in addition to the budget that we have, or some of these other calls aren't going to be answered. Assist other agencies. When people are calling to assist other agencies, that could be DCF, that could be Montague, Deerfield. There's a lot of things in there. They want a police officer. B&Es, has been 157 of those. BOLOs, which is be on the lookout. So those are crimes that are in progress. I had one yesterday at that car accident. There was a vehicle that was driven by a matter of fact, if anybody can help with this, by a driving school that was part of that accident that left the scene. That would be a BOLO. There's 215 of those. Despondent people, I said this already, 321 people. 321 people that are despondent, and they could be anywhere from suicidal to, earlier today, we had a naked person walking down the street to somebody standing on a bridge. You know, which one, how do we determine? Councilor Lipinski wants us to ask all of these questions to make sure that it's not a ex that is jilted in the relationship. How much delay do we have before we respond to these calls? 199 disabled vehicles in town. That's where we put our blue lights, assist them in getting tow companies. We usually give somebody a ride to where they're going. 931 domestic disturbances and domestics. Again, which ones are just arguments and which ones are assaults? If we don't respond, could somebody die? Not trying to be scary. It's the truth. This is what we face every single day. 931, that's about 3 every single day. Erratic operations, traffic complaints, 488. That's the speedings on Elm Street that people are concerned about, and I get it. You know, we have a lot of streets in town that have a lot of speeding complaints. A lot of people do not adhere to the speed limit. There's only so much of us. 412 fireworks and noise complaints. Councilor Lipinski stated that leave us alone, let us do the noise complaints, let us have noise. But again, if we do leave you alone and we don't respond to noise complaints, it only accelerates. 251 issues of fraud. Now, somebody pointed out the other day that, yeah, it could be a telephone fraud and there's nothing a police officer can do. Well, they're wrong. When an elderly person has telephone fraud and they're a victim of fraud, we not only take the complaint and we not only tell the federal government, and a lot of times we can, and sometimes we can't get their money back, but we also counsel them of how not to be a victim a second time. 712 harassing calls, syringe pickup, even though we do have an agency in town, Tapestry, that helps us pick up syringes, our officers still go out to the parks and find syringes themselves. We did 113 of those over the course of last year. Cahoots could help us with that. 34 illegal dumpings. This is usually someplace like somebody takes tires and they throw them into the woods, or take garbage bags, and our officers will go through the garbage bags with the maggots and the diapers with the feces in it, and find in it something that has their mailing address on it, and we charge them with that crime. Not sure most people would like to do that, but our officers do. Indecent exposures or sex offenses, that's 36 different sex offenses. Juvenile issues, unruly use is 192. Believe me, I wish parents would be able to control their children, but often they can't, and they call us because they can't control their own children. Or an agency calls us. Again, it goes back to that we're a county seat. And we have a lot of agencies that call us and ask us to do Section 12s on 9-year-olds because they can't control it. Do I believe that the police should be responsible to go into a service that has employees there to try to work on a 9-year-old? No, the police should not be doing that. But they're so out of control that the people that are working with them, which are civilian-based, are scared of them, and they request our help. 335 thefts, shopliftings, and robberies. 124 malicious destruction or vandalism complaints. 929 medical emergencies. These are only the ones, there's much more than this in town. Fire department does a lot of these now. Greenfield Police Department used to do them, but we're too busy and we can't do them. We can't do all of the medical emergencies. The fire department has stepped up to the plate, has done a great job with them. They've started their own ambulance service, and AMR does an awesome job in this town. We have one of the best ambulance services that I know of any community right here in Greenfield using those two agencies. But when somebody is overdosing and they're not breathing, most people are relieved to see the first person that arrived as a police officer with Narcan. Should we not do that anymore? Missing people, we've searched for 60 missing people, 49 narcotics complaints, and let me tell you, there's a lot more narcotics complaints than that, but I can't release all of those numbers. Open doors on premise and park checks. These are when the officers just randomly go and check a park, make sure everything's calm, say hi to the kids, make sure that the vomit isn't everywhere. If it's messy, we call the DPW. We work with the mayor's office and the other agencies. We've done that 3,803 times. Something that Cahoots probably could help with that, and I'd be more than willing to talk to them about that, but probably not the open doors at 2:00 in the morning. We've done 577 civil processes. What we have to do as police officers, so civilians wouldn't be able to do that. Sex offender registration, we register 137 sex offenders in the city. It does exist. Bad people do exist. People that make mistakes do exist. 1,147 suspicious unknown problems. That could be anything. That could be a horrendous, badly thing, or it could be something simple, but you don't know until you get there. 1,468 traffic stops that we've done in Greenfield. People complain that we don't do traffic, but we do, as much as we can. We don't have a dedicated traffic officer. We used to. We changed that to a dedicated outreach officer, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. That number would be higher if we had dedicated traffic officers, but we can't afford them. 384 trespassing and unwanted. People don't understand, but it happens. 2:00 in the morning, a drunk comes in, sleeps on your couch. You wake up. There's a stranger in your house. You don't want him there. Who do you call? And 1,147 welfare checks. And a lot of those come from service agencies, doctors. And a lot of those is, I haven't seen my neighbor in 3 or 4 days. Their mail is stacking up. Their animal looks like they're starving to death. These are the real calls that happen in Greenfield. These are the real calls that I need your help. I need the counselor's help, and I need the mayor's help to tell me which ones of these we do not do anymore. It breaks my heart. It really does. This is not what I'm about. If anybody knows me, I'm Mr. Community Policing. I've always been Mr. Community Policing. I spent all my time one-on-one with people to try to help them. And now I'm being told to stop helping them and leave people alone. So here's some discussion points that I want to have. I have some more slides after this, but But these are the discussion points that we can have at the end. But what calls should police officers not respond to? Currently, what agency is in place to handle the calls that police officers are instructed not to respond to? And what do we tell the public when they call and we can't respond? What do I say to somebody? Sorry? Call somebody else that can't respond either? How do we do that to the people of Greenfield? How do I do that to my neighbor? Ed Jarvis is my neighbor. That elderly person that he talked to, wondering who he's going to call, is my neighbor too. Christ, that could have been me, getting old myself. So here we are, we're facing $400,000 cut in salary lines. I got to point out though, it's not really $400,000, it's more than that. So in FY22, because people have been asking where these cuts are coming from, but in FY22, our budget was $3,412,489 as amended. And now FY23 as amended is $3,139,163. This is just my salary lines. It's important to note that FY22 did not include the bargain COLA and stipend increases that was negotiated in good faith, approved by the city council after the budget was requested and finalized. Those numbers weren't in there already. So I have to pay for that as well. That was already bargained and approved, something I didn't do. I support, but I didn't do. In order to level the services in FY22, the FY23 should have included a 3% increase over 2 years and should have been increased by $102,374. Plus, it should have included what was fairly negotiated and accepted by the council, the $51,149 body cam stipend and the $7,000 canine stipend. I want to point out that a lot of people, some of which are watching this at this moment, question why we have the $7,000 canine stipend this year, but we didn't have it last year. Then this is a new program. The $7,000 in stipend was fairly negotiated in the contract between when he got the dog, which he was willing to work with the dog uncompensated until we were able to negotiate that contract. Once we negotiated the contract, it starts in July 1 of this year. So the money is in there for this year. It wasn't in there last year. I know it wasn't in there last year. We got the dog of May of last year. He wasn't here for a whole year. So in FY22, even though the budget was set at $3,412,489, it should have been $3,566,019. That would have been FY22 level service. We scraped, we went without, and we were able to make things work. Can't do that now. So as amended, it's $3,139,163. The true cost of the reduction of services on the salary line is closer to $426,856, just on the salary line. Patrols calls of service. So let's talk about our calls of service again. Calls of service for 2021 was 27,611. We average, and I say average because it doesn't always happen. If anybody knows police work, on a full moon, there's a lot more calls than when there's not a full moon. And so we can't pick and choose when the calls come. Usually they call them all at once, and then we might go an hour or two with no calls. But we average about 76 calls a day, the average of 25 calls per shift. For safety reasons, we should not have less than 2 officers. That is the standard across all of America. 2 officer responses standard for any type of emergency type of calls. Greenfield Police Department, knowing our calls of service, knowing all of the numbers that I showed you there, should be able to handle 2 calls at the same time. So that's 4 officers. That's all we got. I said this before, there's more people serving coffee and donuts at Dunkin' Donuts than we have officers on the street. There's more lifeguards working at the swimming pool than we have officers on the street on a weekend. Each shift is assigned 6 officers. That's 7-day-a-week coverage. Officers rotate 4 days working with 2 days off. That equals to a maximum of 4 patrol officers per shift, per day per shift. That's what we got. 6 officers assigned, 4 of them that work in any given time, unless somebody has COVID, unless somebody is sick, unless somebody is on vacation, they have a personal day. There's time off here and there. When that happens, we go down to 3 officers. A sergeant steps up, becomes the 4th. So we still have 2 officers able to cover 2 emergency calls. Everybody's chips in. If it's not a sergeant, if there's not a sergeant, a lieutenant gets in the car and they go on the shift. 3 shifts, day shift, evening shift, midnight shift equals 18 patrol officers. It's going to come into play in a minute. Current detectives, we have 3 general detectives. That's all we got. 3. They rotate among 2 shifts, giving us 1 detective available per shift. That doesn't include any sick, vacation, or personal time. These 3 detectives have investigated 298 major crimes over 2021. They registered 137 sex offenders. In addition to that, they also help cover the patrol shifts when the patrol shifts are down. We have 1 detective assigned to the district attorney's major crime task force. He's responsible for all narcotics investigations in Greenfield. You know, when people call us up and they're like, hey, my neighbor's doing drugs, we need help. That's that street. Happens on the next street, happens on the next street, happens in this complex, happens in that complex. How happens in this housing unit, happens in that. We have 1 guy, 1, that handles all of the narcotics work in town. That's what we got. I'm not lying here. This is what they do. They do sexual assaults, unattended deaths, drug arrests, sex offender registration violations, missing persons warrants, malicious destruction, Section 12s and 35s, protected custodies. Section 12s and 35s is involuntary committals. They do overdoses. They do firearms arrests and investigations, assault and battery with weapons. Larceny is over $1,200, and vehicles, breaking and entering into vehicles. Child abuse crimes. They do cyber crimes, motor vehicle summonses. They do arson, 209 violations, accidents with serious injuries, school incidents, elder abuse, prostitution, town bylaw violations, disorderly conduct, suspicious activity, drug and firearms destruction, domestic disturbance investigations, crimes against disabled people, shoplifting, leaving the scenes of accidents, robberies, OUI arrests, bomb and gun threats. I got 3 people that do that. Not making things up. That's what we got. I have 6 sergeants, 5 sergeants. They rotate. 5 sergeants assigned to 1 patrol, 1 per shift, 2 swing sergeants. That covers 3 shifts, 7 days a week, with the exception of any sick time, injury, vacation, personal comp days off. If we have any of that, I assign a patrolman as a officer in charge, which is a stipend. Because then we have an officer that may have only been here for 1 or 2 years, is the entire supervision of the police department during those hours of which they're working. Not something I'm really comfortable with, but we make do with what we got, and that's what we got. And then I have 1 sergeant working Monday through Friday. He's assigned to all of the detective cases and all of the CROs, which I'm about to talk in a minute. Did I miss CROs? I may have my slides messed up, but he organizes all of that. He organizes all of our outreach, organizes all of the investigations. 1 sergeant does that. Where's my CROs? I may have deleted a slide, and I'll talk about them in a minute if I missed it. Current command shift, we have 1 chief, 1 deputy chief, and 2 lieutenants for command. Currently, we're running with only an acting chief, which is myself, and 2 lieutenants. The patrol lieutenant is going to be assigned to evening shift. The administrative assigned is to day shift. The patrol lieutenant plans on retiring January 1st, which leaves me and 1 lieutenant to do all of the work, all of posts, all of the reporting that we have to do. That has to monitor body cameras, that has to monitor cruiser cameras, has to make sure all of our officers are acting in the way that they're supposed to, and they're following rules and regulations. We have to organize our training. We have to organize grants. We have to pay our people. We do all of that work. It's going to be down to 2 of us. We have 3 civilians. I have an administrative assistant. She's in charge of the payroll, billing, and grants. She's invaluable. The lowest paid person that we have in the department, does a ton of work. Records clerk, again, lowest paid in the department. She's responsible for all record keeping, firearms, registration, record requests, FOIAs that we get hit with every single day. I got 1 person doing that. She does a great job. Not going to lose her. These people aren't even on the table. I'll fight you guys for this one. Not on the table. Court administrator, we have an attorney here at the Greenfield Police Department. Almost nobody else does. He gets paid half of what he should get paid. And he's responsible for all of our evidence storage, court review, records, parking hearings, and he's legal counsel. He doesn't get paid no $500 an hour like most lawyers do. Again, these guys are off the table. They're the lowest paid employees here. They do the most work. I can't lose them. We won't function. CROs. Sorry, this slide should have been near the detectives. 2 CROs. What's the CRO? Community Resource Officer. These are our outreach officers. They do 95% of our community policing here. 2 officers, 1 on day shift, 1 on 3 to 11. They perform community policing activities. They outreach to at-risk communities. These are the officers that go out when it's 10 degrees to check on our homeless to make sure that they're still alive and they haven't frozen in their tents. Somebody has to do it. Nobody else in the community does. We do. These same people without shelter that everybody say that we harass is devastated at our cuts because they know that they are the population that's going to be suffering the most. These are the people that have invited us to our weddings, their weddings. They invite us to their meals. They draw pictures for us. They're part of us. They're our brothers and sisters in the community like everybody else. We don't harass them. Yes. Do we enforce the park rules? Yes. We're the only agency that does. Do we make sure that they're not drinking, vomiting, urine, defecating and urinating on our stage at the parks? Yes, we do. But we also check on them. We give them backpacks in the winter that has hand warmers and other types of essential stuff. We give them jackets. I think we handed out 250 jackets, winter coats to the homeless. This is what the CROs do. They do. They do youth mentoring. They show up after school because we're not allowed in the school anymore. They show up after school where the kids playing basketball and they shoot hoops with them and mentor them and talk to them. A lot of these kids, they don't have parents at home. They don't have the role models at home. They look towards our officers to do that. Whether you like it or not, that's what happens. That's the truth of what we do. They work with the special needs community at the Green River House. We go to their dinners. We're part of their board of directors. They act as the school liaisons when the schools do need our help. Human rights liaison is our CRO. CIT, co-response, problem solving, downtown patrol, all of that, bicycle patrol, all of that done by these 2 officers. The majority of the proactivity that you see from our officers is done by these 2. These positions are also responsible for the unfunded portion of the scope of work that the $180,000 co-response grant does. If we lose these 2 officers, there's a good chance we're going to lose the clinicians. I said it once, I'll say it again. We have to say their names. They're not making $102,000. These are the wages right here. Brendan Smith makes $63,460. That's a good wage for a good job. Adam Belleville, who has been a police officer for approximately 10 years in other communities, he's top step at $69,118. Marcus Johansson and Jedediah Henry make $62,275. They just graduated the academy, so that's the lowest ranking officers that we have. Nicholas Limoges makes the same amount. Madeline Llewellyn makes $63,460.80. And Laura Gordon, one of our senior officers, she makes $69,118.40. Just to let you know, she put in her resignation for a leave of absence to the mayor this week. She's leaving our department because instead of her, it would have been Ella Siniger. And Ella Siniger is a brand new officer that has a family, that has a house to have to pay for. Laura's leaving to save Ella. That totals $451,984. Now you're going to say that that's more than the $400,000. I can't chop an officer in half and only pay him half. So I have to have a little bit more. I have to have some cushion. Those are the names. That's the figures. So where do we cut 7? This is the crux of the conversation right now. I have 6 officers assigned to the days, evenings, and mids. That means I have 4 people per shift. I have the 2 outreach. I have the 4 detectives. I have the 6 sergeants, 3 command, and 3 civilians. Now I know a lot of people are like, cut the command. I get that, but you got to have a chief of police. And I understand that people don't want certain person as a chief. I'm not here to debate that, but we have to have a chief. You have to have a lieutenant. Those roles, I'm not talking about names here. I'm talking about the roles. I have 3 civilians. So I guess I'm asking you, when I'm done, I'm almost done here, but where do we cut the 7? I'll come back to the slide. I just want to remind you that I also have a $25,000 reduction in expenses. Most expenses are fixed costs. The price is what the price is. I have $25,000 in reduced budget. I have an $11,500 unexpended expense for a generator that the radiator has gone, and I have to replace the radiator. I can't imagine how it costs $11,500 for a radiator, but we got quotes, and it is what it is. $40,000 $40,000 expected increase in the gasoline line on top of what we have. I have a $40,000 gasoline line. We made that when gasoline was $2 a gallon. It's $5 a gallon, $4.99 a gallon right now. What is it going to be by the end of the summer? So I'm expecting to at least double what I have. It's reasonable to say that. So I have $40,000 in unexpected gasoline. And I have an increased cost in vehicle maintenance of $10,000, I expect, because my fleet is aging. The youngest cars in my fleet right now are 2020 hybrids. And I got to tell you, the 2020 hybrids, which is first year on the assembly line, they're all breaking down left and right for not just ours, across the country. And you can't get pieces. I had a car down for 7 months waiting for one piece. We have the same problem everybody else is facing. I know that the people watching this have the same problems. Can't buy a car right now. I ordered a car in July of 2021. I haven't got it yet. So my costs are going to increase if I can get them fixed. So we're underfunded by not $25,000. I'm underfunded by about $86,500. Now, I have some possible line reductions. Academy training, we're not going to send anybody to the academy this year, so I'll take that. Put that in there. Academy physicals is $2,000. I'll take that and put it in there because we're not going to be hiring anybody. So I got some money there. Telephone, I probably can scrape up. It's not just telephone. It's all communication. It says telephone in the line, but it's all communication. It's the cruiser computers. It's the dispatch computers. It is the telephones. It is all of that. I might be able to scrape up probably about $10,000 out of that line. Uniform expense, I'm not going to be hiring anybody for the academy, so I can scrape up $10,000 out of that line. Possible line reductions is $26,000. That means I'm still under budget by $60,500. So what expenses do we not pay? Do I continue 2 officers cruisers trying to curb fuel costs because I'm under budget by $60,000 in hopes that the council, who doesn't seem to be very proactive in giving us more money, that will give us more money? Do I not repair cruisers, buildings, or equipment? Do I let the generator go and not have a generator when the next storm comes and then all of the phone lines don't work? Do I not send officers to advanced training, which is typically legal-based, behavioral mental health, or de-escalation-based? Do I shut down computers and phone lines? Do I shut off CGIS? CGIS is our crime computer. Or not? Do I just not have office supplies? Even if I cut some of that stuff, it still doesn't all equal into $60,000. So here we're at. I paint the bleak picture. I understand it. I understand people don't appreciate some of the decisions that I've had to make. But I have a fiduciary responsibility to this budget that has been given to me. Some of the decisions I have had to make are hard decisions. I agree with the counselors. They're not popular with the decisions. I agree with counselors. It has energized some people that didn't have a clue that we were even facing cuts to begin with. And I understand that they've been sending emails to counselors. I've been getting the emails too. I can't control what people say, just like the counselors can't control what the people say. And I apologize if I do understand one counselor is, and maybe she'll speak today, is afraid. And the elders are afraid. I understand this. It was not my decision to make. These are going to be difficult cuts, but here we are. So I'm hoping that the Public Safety Council can look at this chart and maybe help find the 7 positions to be cut. That's my spiel.
Thank you, Chief. I thought you gave a great presentation. It's probably one that we should have been doing maybe over the years, giving a more dynamic look at the budget and what the budget pays for and the personnel that service the various pieces of the budget in the community. Because I think there is a great misunderstanding out there of how the budget relates to the personnel and the services you provide to the community. There's not a lot of people that ever come. I've been on 17 years or more on the Public Safety Commission, and not only don't city councilors come, but the public doesn't come. So I guess it's probably our fault as well that we're not the outlet for more information and providing a stronger learning curve for the public to understand exactly what it is you do, as well as the fire department and the ambulance company as well, because we represent those people also. But I think it's a great path forward to be able to, we haven't done it before for security reasons. I think personnel, we've stayed away from talking about personnel when they work, so people don't know who we have and who we do not have on the road, as the case with the call I was on with you with the state police earlier this week and what they can provide. They don't like to provide how many people they have on and when they have them on. But I think that the whole conversation has changed. We have to move to just tell the truth. This is what we have. This is what we do, and try to understand from folks what they want us to do and what they don't want us to do. I kind of like to open it up to other commissioners if they have some questions or comments or suggestions and how you might approach the situation you're in, so we can work towards getting a solution to offer the mayor that's done in an intelligent and a base way for us to deal with this. So if you can delete the sharing of the screen, I can see more people. I can only see 3 of us right now.
Did that work?
Mr. Chair, Adam talking.
Yeah, go ahead, Adam. You have to speak because I can't see everybody.
Yeah, no problem. Awesome presentation, very in-depth. Incredibly appreciated. Tons of work went into that. And I think it was very, very well done. So that being said, I say we go right to exactly what those questions are. Let's discuss this. I mean, what's our goal tonight? What are we going to do? What's our plan? And where are we going with this? Because this isn't going well right now. So I'm just opening up to discussion.
Okay. Susan, you want to?
I'd just like to say, first of all, thank you, Chief Gordon, for the presentation. The word that's come up for me is staggering. As a new member of the Public Safety Commission, I'm appreciative of your comments, actually, Chair, regarding what has been shared in the past in the history of Greenfield with the Public Safety Commission and what has not. And Chief Gordon, you've just presented a pathway forward. The pathway forward of how transparency and openness around sharing information is very, very important. It is always important, but it's even more important now. But that doesn't take us away from the present moment. So I'm very grateful to be here tonight. I'm committed in my service to this commission. I also want to say that I believe you presented to us a proposal. That's what I see before us, a very painful proposal. And I would like to pass it back to you, Butch, at this point, in case other commissioners would like to comment at this point in time.
Sure. Michelle?
Yes, I want to thank Chief Gordon, Acting Chief Gordon. You've answered some of the questions that we've asked in the last few meetings and summarized everything in a fantastic, thoughtful, and factual presentation. So I just wanted to thank you for that. It was a lot. And my position as a new commissioner would be, I'm open and listening, but I wouldn't want to make any recommendations on how you're going to manage your department. I would want to take suggestions from you and where you think that you can live with the cuts if they stand, because you would know better than I would. So I would just leave that. And I think some more discussion should be had.
So, Chief, so when you're cutting
Chair,
people,
I'm
yes.
sorry, Danny Letourneau had her hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see her, Danny. Go ahead.
I just wanted to, it's sort of a procedural thing. I just want to let everybody know that I'm staying on. The mayor did have to jump off at this point to go to the Board of Health meeting. And after that, she's going to the school committee meeting. So I will be here for the duration. So I just wanted to make sure you guys know that so it doesn't just look like somebody's jumped off.
Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, so Chief, when you're cutting people, you're cutting programs as well. And so that's part of the problem. So from your approach, I mean, Susan is correct in a way. You are really making a proposal in some ways, but I sort of want you to maybe define it a little tighter for us and how you see the least impact by who you release. I know, last in, first out, but that's not always best practice for any department. But you might, through contract requirements, be kind of a situation as well.
Yep.
Maybe you could just talk about that for a minute.
So to answer Commissioner Laurie's question, we have a couple paths that we can look at. We can look at getting rid of the midnight shift. I live in Greenfield. If there's something's going on, if there's somebody crashed in my front yard, if somebody's trying to break into my house, would I feel comfortable where calling and getting nobody? I don't like that solution, but it's a path. Do I get rid of all of the detectives and community outreach? So that doesn't need, that only equates to 6 people, but I probably wouldn't get rid of the narcotics officer that's instrumental in force. So that's 5 people there. But we could get rid of all of the detectives and all the community resource officers and have 0 outreach and go to only response level type of department where we basically act more like a fire department. No offense, but we stay in the station and we go on the call, we come back to the station. And then we go back on the call, go back to the station. So there's that solution. We can also go to a level of not being able to handle 2 emergencies at once. I don't think that's going to be we're going to be able to survive that. There's often our officers are going on more than 1 emergency at once. And that's going to put lives in jeopardy. If somebody calls and they're not breathing and the other officers are already involved in an emergency, we're going to want somebody there. So there's 3 paths there. There's another path of me just ignoring city council and just spending right away. And at the end of the year say, I guess we got nothing. There's a path there too. I'm not really at the moment ready to decide which exact path that we're going to be taking. And that's part of the conversations. I think right now we're at the conversation level. But those are the 3, those are the main ones.
Sure.
Can I just answer Butch too first? Yep. So the question that you have is last in, first out. That's a requirement. You can't pick and choose. You can't say, well, I like this guy better than I like that guy, or, I'm just going to keep the white males, or I'm just going to keep the females. We can't do that. The contracts doesn't allow for that. So that's why we have to do the last in, first out. So does that answer that question?
Yeah, and are they typically the night shift, the younger people?
Well, I don't want to look at shifts. I want to look at positions. We're going to lose 6 positions, or 7. So I'm sorry, 7 positions. Where those people come from? Do they typically reside on the midnight shift? Yes, but does that mean I'm going to get rid of the midnight shift? Not necessarily, because I would move other people.
You would move people around, right?
Yeah. Commissioner, I'm sorry, Lori, did I answer your question? The paths that we're going to take? All right, good.
Susan, you had a question?
Yes, Chief. I imagine this may have been semi-just answered. The idea of furloughs, this is probably very contract driven. However, in other situations where I've seen major budgets contracted, when it's come down really to hardcore personnel to meet a massive cut. Furloughs are the question I have. Phasing in anyone who would be in agreement to take a period of time layoff. I understand contracts can drive this discussion, but there are many different kind of scenarios. So in the course of the year, as events evolve, God forbid we don't have worst case scenarios in Franklin County that we're seeing across the country, different choices could be made so that we could do a decision-making process over time. I understand July 1 budget. That's why I'm asking about furloughs and pacing and phasing.
Right. So you're absolutely right about that. I put out a offer for furloughs for our furloughs or leave of absence. Laura Gordon took a leave of absence for a period of 1 year in order to save an officer. I think it's very nice of her to do that. It's a big loss for the Greenfield Police Department. Big loss. She was outreach. So, but anyways, I'm a little biased on that, so I'm going to leave that one alone. But we can put out other offers. So I have to, before I lay people off, I'm going to have to sit down with the union and try to come up with some type of other types of activities that we can do, such as furloughs or refuse to do stipends. I mean, one of the decisions that we can put, which Councilor Bullock mentioned, was going after the body cam stipend, but they would have to agree upon that. And I do have to say, and I say this with a heavy heart, that our officers are extremely demoralized after that last meeting and the Human Rights Commission meeting and all the other meetings that's happened. And in order to ask something from people, demoralizing them first is not the answer. So I'm not sure how much willingness there would be for the unions to move when we did what we did to them. And I understand that people are mad at certain things that happen. I get that. I'm not happy about it either. But when we treat the whole and we say stuff like leave us alone, that hurts our people to the core. And that's not what our people are about. And they feel that they have lost the support of the citizens in Greenfield. And I'm here to tell them, and I'll tell you guys the same thing. They may have lost the support of the city council or some of the city councilors, but they have not lost the support of the 17,000 other people that live in the city. The outpour of support has been tremendous towards our department, and I appreciate it. So I tell my officers that every day, and we get signs of support. People are sending us donuts. They're sending us, checks to save the. People came in here in tears, giving us a $2,500 check to save the canine program, and it came from his mother's inheritance because he thought that that's what his mother would like to do. That's the type of support we have. So we may have lost it from a small handful of counselors, but we have not lost the support of the community. And I remind my guys of that every day. So will they be willing to give some? Probably, because that's the type of people they are. But we have to get there first. We're not there yet.
I'd be surprised at that. But your timeline. So the new budget starts July 1. What's your timeline to fit this into the new budget? Does it have to be fit in by July 1 and you start the new year? Because you're going to be starting off in the hole if you do.
Yeah. So that's something that we have to heavily consider. I have a couple paths that I'm working on. I'm hoping that there's some counselors that may find some support and may compartmentalize their anger and look at two different issues at the same time. So I'm hoping that happens. I don't feel it's appropriate to give anybody a layoff without a 30 days notice. I would ask them to give us a notice if they're going to leave, and we should do the same thing with the employees. So I'm probably looking more of like an August 1st layoff timeline. But the longer I go, the deeper the hole gets. So if I take the path where I ignore the cuts, eventually we eat up all the money, and maybe March 1st, I won't have any police department. And that's not smart either. So yeah, so we have to make these decisions fairly quick. But I don't also want to make them too quick and too harsh where we lose these officers. They're not coming back. These are all fully trained officers that came from other departments. Every single time I bring back an officer, if I get the funding back and I lose these people and I hire somebody new, we're going to have to send them to a police academy. First of all, it's the competitiveness. You can ask Northampton how hard it is to hire after you go through a budget defunding. It's extremely hard. But budget-wise, I have to spend $50,000 to send them to a police academy, and I'm not allowed. I can't really use them for almost a year on patrol. So it's going to take us years in order to replace this. That's the truth.
Right.
So hopefully, I'm going to try to do everything that I can to lose the least amount possible. And I've told my guys that too. You know, don't go signing any paperwork, please. You know, wait until we can try to figure this out, and maybe there's some path that we can find to try to save something so we don't lose bodies.
Sure. So today's the 8th. Our next regular meeting would be on the 29th. Do you think that's enough time for you to kind of meet with the unions and really form in your own mind about, you know, offering us one or two options so we can collectively make a recommendation to the mayor so you'll be ready in August at some time?
I think I'll have to.
Yeah,
I think
me too.
That'll be, yeah. I don't think I have much choice.
Right. So I would just ask the counselors, you know, if that works pretty much for them. We'll put it on the agenda. Hopefully it'll be a decision time. We'll plan for it to be a decision time, you know, a vote to recommend to the mayor, you know, a path for reductions on the 29th.
As the counselors eloquently said, it's going to be a very hard thing to do.
Right. Okay. Any more questions or comments from counselors?
I just want a clarification, please, Chief. My understanding would be that at the June 29th meeting, you would be presenting one or two, possibly three pathways forward that you could live with, if that's the phrase we want to use, regarding how to address the $425,000 budget cut for FY23. Do I have that clear?
I think that would be clear. I really want to try to meet with as many counselors because I really want to listen to the community and see where the community feels, because I've seen it in both directions. I've seen people say, you know, chop patrol, and on the very next conversation, chop detectives, and the next conversation, save the detectives. So it's all over there. But I think the most important thing is to talk to the counselors and see what they imagine this change to be. It's their words. So I would love to meet with them and talk to them one-on-one. I've met with some of them already.
I have a second clarification question, and I'd like to turn to the chair for that. Butch, one of the items we had in the agenda for tonight really was trying to get clarity on how we would address the police reform bill as a way of moving forward in engagement as a commission, because I do believe that's part and parcel of this process as we go forward. And I might be mistaken here, but I would like clarity on if other commissioners feel the same way, because I do think that is something we need to simultaneously move forward with in the meetings going forward, in terms of reviewing the police reform bill, continuing to keep our PSC meetings open and transparent, and inviting participation from city councilors and the public to engage in that process with us, but to make a commitment for 6 months going forward of a half-an-hour meeting, just looking at each section of that reform bill as we go forward. I believe this has to happen simultaneously.
Sure. And let's just take that up next. That's the next thing. Let's just finish up on this piece, and it is part of it. You're right, but it's the next item on the agenda. And did I see a hand up by Rick Clark? Did you have a question or a comment, Rick?
Well, yes, my question, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, my question is, I'm sorry, I've been listening all along. I had problems joining you. The question I have is, I saw where we could only go until 5:30. Is that correct?
It's 5:30. It's amazing how time went.
Right.
I don't know. Yeah,
So
we're still on.
Well, I'm just saying that
Right.
there's a lot of ground to cover here. We've already heard a lot of information. My one question for the chief was going to be related to staff, was that, is there any way we can work on scheduling of any type? I know that's what's happened previously in other departments. And I just wonder if that's an option. I haven't heard a mention about that. But that's what I've seen, an answer to some of this.
Sure. We've already talked to our employees about doing something like the fire department does, where they work 24 on, 24 off, 24 on. I believe it's 5 days off. So we've talked about with that. Some of the scheduling changes, do we really need to be able to handle 2 emergencies at the same time between 3 a.m. and 7 a.m.? Maybe we can shift some of that over to 7 p.m. to 3 a.m. There are some discussions to be had there.
Yeah, and those are some of the things I was thinking. I wasn't thinking 24-hour. I was thinking more 12-hour, and have 2 shifts of 12-hour, and have it could even be weighted as a way to answer. So in other words, you wouldn't have a total of 6 on, you might have a total of 4 at one time. And then at night, you might only have 2 on, but that would be giving you cover at night.
Yeah.
Those are all the options that I can think of right now, but I'm sure there are a lot more.
The reason why I brought up the 24 schedule is that there's been some discussion about having parity with the fire department. And the fire department has that type of schedule. So that was an easy thing to talk about, is if we're going to talk about parity, we may have to talk about other types of parities. You know, the fire department, and I'm not here to attack the fire department, they do a phenomenal job with what they have. And I think that they're underfunded. And the answer to parity with the fire department is not to underfund the police department to match an underfunded fire department. It's to properly fund the fire department. So there has been talks about what we can do. You know, we have 27,000 calls of service. To parity the fire department, we'd have to probably get rid of 25,000 of those calls. I'm not sure we can do that. So parity is not really the answer to that, but we have been looking at, because those things have been mentioned, and I do hear these things and I do take them to heart, that we do look at one of the first things I did is I sat down with the fire chief and I asked him, I said, what are you doing right that we're not doing right? And, so we're going to be looking at some of the ways that they do things, and maybe that's how we survive. But you're right too. Do we look at, all of a sudden, changing, have less coverage on the midnight shift? We can look at that type of thing. I'm not prepared to give you an answer on that, but it's definitely, everything is on the table right now. I'm listening to everybody and anything, and I'm paying attention to, I'm on topic here. I'm on this, and some people, there's a public comment here that I'm going to be listening to them too. And just like I listened to the public comment at the city council, and I listened to the other public comments at the Human Rights Commission and everything like that, I pay attention to what's going on. So I'll take all of this stuff into consideration.
Well, Butch, I don't know where we want to go from here, but I do agree with Susan that we do also need to be addressing the reforms that are coming through, and we need to be starting on that right away.
Right.
All these things are important aspects of this, but I think we have to keep really in touch with Chief Gordon, in that we are dealing with something that we have to address very soon.
Matter of fact, if I can, if I'm not out of line, I'd prefer to table the police reform talk tonight because I've been really busy on these other topics and I'm not as prepared on police reform. The only thing that police reform is going on right now is we're doing all of the paperwork to certify the officers that have the last name A through H. And it's quite a bit of paperwork that we have to do. We have to re-interview everybody and do all of the things that Post wants us to do for those officers by June 15th. So I'm not done with that yet. In the middle of doing that and the budgets and all of that. So I'm not really prepared to talk a lot about other things that go on in Post. That's a lot of baggage to unfold right there.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
Yeah. Okay, any more questions for the chief or the budget cuts or any of that sort of stuff? I think we've all agreed that we're going to put it on the agenda for the 29th, and we'll have some options from the chief to work with, and we'll come to a conclusion on the 29th for a joint recommendation to the mayor.
Sounds good to me.
And if we're done with
I'm
that
fine with that.
discussion, the thing with the reform bill was not to actually discuss the reform bill tonight. Commissioner White and Commissioner Clark, they wanted to see a process for us to begin to dive into it and work with the deputy and sort of break it out in sections. I think that's what Susan wanted to see. So I just asked Susan maybe to speak to that, and then maybe we can come up with a process going forward at each monthly meeting where we take a section of it and kind of review it with the deputy.
Thank you,
Well,
Chair. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Susan.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to put, basically, it's an echo of what the chair just said. I actually am making a proposal, which really would be a motion for the commission. This is not on the back of you, Chief, regarding the police reform bill. This is an effort for the Public Safety Commission as a group of commissioners to become more informed and engage in a dialogue with whoever chooses to be present at our PSC meetings regarding the reform bill that was enacted in December 2020 by the governor of Massachusetts. It is very important we become versed in what has been voted into law. And also for anyone who has reviewed it, it covers very many important areas that have been raised in the national public discourse and in our regional discourse, and also here in Greenfield. So I am actually making a motion I would like to make a motion regarding this, but I'd like to pause, Chair, because there might be more discussion before I make a motion. Thank you. Unless you want
I think it's better you make the motion and we get a second, then we discuss it.
Okay, I would like to make a motion that we take the police reform bill, divide it into sections by the categories that are presented in the bill, and take a half an hour at each of our meetings over the next 6 months that we commit to as part of our meetings for a discussion on that section of the bill, to raise questions, share perspectives. Hopefully, Chief Gordon, there would be other members of your department who would be interested to participate in that and share their experience and perspective. So it's not all on you. It would be very valuable to bring in other members of the police department. So I see that I'm picking randomly 30 minutes because really what I believe we need is a commitment over time to this weighty reform bill to better understand it as a community, as a police department, as citizens, and members of Franklin County. And I see this as being very valuable to the Public Safety Commission in terms of our role in our role and responsibilities as volunteers in the service role for the city. That's what so I'd like to put it forward as a motion beginning July, because it's the beginning of the new fiscal year. And from July through January, I think that would be 6 months. That's what I suggest. And we could obviously alter or make amendments as we go along if we find a different process works more effectively. But I'm absolutely not presenting a one-time, one-done deal. That is not what I am proposing here. I'm proposing something that engages us in discussion and dialogue.
Okay, second on that?
I second it.
Okay, Rick. Yeah, perfect. I think that's an ideal way to proceed. It's a 176-page bill, and it's a really very encompassing, very complex piece of legislation that alters the way departments do business in Massachusetts. So it's very important. So the meeting in July, the first meeting in July will be the first session we'll have on that.
I have just a comment.
Yes,
We have to vote on this, but
right.
my reason for seconding this is I think this is an extremely important facet of what we do, and we do need the help of the public in this, and the help of the departments in this, and I agree totally with Susan. I think this is something that we have to approach and get through. And it's a good way to start out with an outline. And that's just what this is, as I see it. It's an outline to help us get going and to bring others in with us. So that's my reason for seconding.
Sure. Any more discussion on the motion? Seeing none. Rick, how do you vote?
I vote aye.
Aye. Michelle?
Aye.
Susan?
Yes.
And Adam?
Aye.
And Butch is aye. Okay. We'll look forward to it. The other thing I had on the agenda was an update from the mayor, and I know she's not here. She's at other meetings, but maybe Danny could update us a little bit. I know that the mayor has hired a firm to do an audit investigation on the PD and how it will probably relate to the accreditation process, because if they're doing an audit, I'm assuming they're going to look at policies and procedures and all the stuff that go into the being an accredited department. And I also think that part of that, I believe it was a law firm that I recommended to her to hire from down east somewhere, that deals, a big part of their law business is workplace investigations. And so I think they will also dovetail that into probably other investigations within the department that are pressing on the mayor's mind.
Yep.
But I don't know if Danny can speak to that at all. If she can't, that's fine.
I can give you a little bit of it. So just to be clear, there's two different things going on investigation wise. So the mayor is attempting to enter into an RFP process for the larger, what would be called an audit of the Greenfield Police Department. And if people are wondering what that means, what we were looking at is, this is a large deep dive that would include public participation, members of the general public, as well as a review of everything, opens the books up, policies, finances, structure, governance, this board, and everything that actually has anything to do with it. If you're wondering what examples there are, there's a few organizations that do it, but it is an RFP process because it's a large expenditure. This will be going out through procurement. No, I'm on the meeting, so okay. Sorry, somebody actually just walked in my room. So it would be an RFP process. So we have to go through procurement, figure out the approximate price, which we did talk to a couple of organizations that do this, just mostly to get pricing and scope. There's a few cities in Massachusetts and neighboring states that have done it, including Holyoke is going to do one, Albany's done one, Savannah, Georgia, I think, or it was Charleston, South Carolina, Methuen, and some others. So anyway, it's a large expenditure, but it seems worth it. It takes about a year to do their baseline one. So this isn't a quick fix. And so the mayor will be coming to the council at some point about it to ask for funding for that. Then the second part, so that's just the update that the mayor wanted to give you guys for that major audit investigation. The second one, I think you just mentioned, Butch, is about the smaller investigation, the internal stuff. I believe actually that attorney that you recommended has been secured for the internal investigations into information related to stuff that came up during the course of the actual recent court case. So that's kind of separate from that. So I mean, that's about all I know for now. I don't have any information on how any of that affects the accreditation process or any of that. But I do think that, if you guys have questions, I can answer as much as I can about those two things.
Sure. Anybody have any questions for Danny? No. Okay. Thanks very much for the update, Danny. Okay. I just have a sort of a procedural question. When I posted the meeting, I thought an hour and a half would be enough, and now we're an hour and 45. So I'm over the posted time. And does that matter, or should?
It doesn't matter anymore now that we're using Zoom. It used to matter when we were using WebEx because sometimes somebody else needed the room. But procedurally, you guys are fine.
Okay.
There's a lot of meetings going on tonight, including, I think, at 6, there's a council committee and there's school committee. So just FYI, because there's a lot of people on here.
Okay,
Right.
good. All right. I just didn't want to get us in Dutch here. Okay, so the next thing on the agenda is public comment. The only thing I want to say about public comment is, one, if you want to make a public comment, it is a comment. It's not a question and answer period. 1, 2, you have to provide your name and address because we have to keep the record of that. And 3, we allow 2 minutes for each person to make a comment. And so I'm prepared to, I don't know how else, you'll have to say something, I guess, because I don't know how I'll see you.
Hi, Chairman. So
Yeah.
Virginia's had her hand up for a little while, so maybe we let her go first.
Sure. Okay, Virginia, just state your name and your address if you would.
Yep. My name's Virginia DeSorger. I live at 43 Silvercrest Lane in Greenfield. First, I'd like to thank all of you for allowing me to speak tonight. It was fascinating. Listen to the discussion. I'd like to thank Deputy Chief Gordon for his thoughtful analysis of how you all were going to work out your new budget. I just had a comment, and I had sent something to Adam and to Butch, which I think may have been forwarded to all of you. I don't really know, but it's about public media posts and people. We are all in this together. And I am one that really believes that. I believe in working together. And I have, my whole life was spent in public safety as a nurse. And I think we want to send a message that, we are eventually going to be okay. But what actually was happening as the result of public media posts were things that were actually threatening towards city council. I'm sure that the police probably gets things all the time, and I'm sorry that that happens to you. I have never spoken in a way in public that was anything, I think, but respectful. But I would ask for caution as we put up public media posts that are sort of, we don't want to pit one side against another. This is my comment. I am requesting that of you to be thinking about the people on the other end. I'm not a big Facebook poster, as you know. I'm not even good at it. But I was the recipient of it. Danny knows that she had helped me with my Facebook post when I was running. I'm terrible at it. But I take to heart the complaints. I have spent hours on the phone talking to people. I have been hurt by some of the things, and I would ask that we be mindful of that. And I hope you all got my letter. That's all. And I want to thank you. I know that what you're doing right now is not easy. What we were doing wasn't easy either. And that's all. Thank you for your time. I'm on the other meeting now with the Board of Health with the lump property. So I don't want you to think that I'm not listening to what the other people had to say, but I worked on that lump property from the beginning. So I was just waiting for my 2 minutes of fame.
Okay.
And thank you for your time.
Thank you, Jenny. Okay. Is there anybody else that would like to make a public comment?
Councilor Ricketts.
Yes, Penny?
Hi, I just want to thank you guys for tonight. I want to thank Acting Chief Gordon for the report.
Penny, can you just state your name and address for us,
Oh,
please?
yeah. Petty Ricketts. I live at 125 Franklin or 175. I'm sorry. I'm still new. I live on Franklin Street, and I
Thank
just
you.
want to say I appreciate the Facebook posts because the community really wasn't paying attention and they didn't know what was going on. And I do want to take this time to also apologize for lots of statements that were made by counselors and things that just crossed the line, in my opinion. So talk about we're all in this together. I'm not scared. I'm not nervous about the cuts. I know that, it's going to work out. And I'm here to support you. I hope some orders come forward from the mayor so we can vote on some funding to help restore some of, the cuts that happen. But I want to let you know that, the information that's been going out through Facebook and getting out through the public has been really good, because I felt like as council, we needed to hear what other people think, because we really based a decision. We had 70 people come to a public comment and half of them were speaking about the pot farm. So that means there's only like 35 or 40 people that spoke on the police budget. So we cut a lot of money for a very small group of people. So no, thank you for driving all that traffic to the council email, because we needed to know and we needed to hear from those folks. So thank you for everything.
Thank you, Penny. Anyone else? Can you say anyone?
I'd like to speak. Can you hear me?
Sure.
Thank you. My name is Molly Merritt. I live on Solar Way. Oh my gosh, I have so much to say, but I just want to say in response to what Penny said, yes, there were 35 people who showed up at the May council meeting to ask for cuts to the police department, but think of all the people who weren't able to show up to the meeting for various reasons, who probably also wanted those cuts. I didn't see anyone at the meeting who was there to speak against cuts. So I think the majority of people in Greenfield were in support of that decision by the counselors. And I also want to point out, I was there at that meeting. That decision was made on the basis of cutting particular officers' salaries. So we're talking about Officer Hay, we're talking about Officer McCarthy, and we're talking about Officer Clark. And in my opinion, these people are not keeping us safe. Racially discriminating against community members and members of the police force is not keeping us safe. Showing up drunk to work repeatedly is not keeping us safe. Displaying a Confederate flag, terrorizing children in a neighborhood is not keeping us safe. So these cuts are, we want these cuts to be made directed towards those three individuals. I know you said, Chief Gordon, that, first, the last in, the first out, but you also said that you're speaking with union representatives this week. You're a smart person. I think you can figure this out. The mayor also, has a role in deciding who the police chief is. She could fire Hay. I'm sure you could have a conversation with union reps and let go some of those other officers who are not keeping us safe. They're terrorizing our community. So I have a lot else to say, but I imagine my 2 minutes is up and I'm going to pass it on to someone else.
Okay, thank you, Molly. Is there someone else who would like to speak? Going once, going twice?
Danielle
Danny, go ahead,
Letourneau.
Danny.
Yep.
Sorry.
I was waiting to see if anybody else wanted to speak because I was here for work. But I actually want to speak during public comment, just
Sure.
a bit, if I may. So
Go
I'm
ahead.
Danny Letourneau. I live at 40 Garfield Street in Greenfield. I'm a resident of Greenfield. I've been working for the city for just over 2 years, but I've been involved in stuff in the city for 21 years. And I've been on the organizing end of campaigns similar goals as the People's Budget campaign. I find their information really interesting. I've been following them for a long time. But one of the things I do want to say about that in particular is that we have their number one goal. They have three major goals, and one is participatory budgeting, which I really would be curious to see how that works in a municipal setting in Massachusetts. But the other one is the crisis response, the civilian crisis response. And I just want to make sure it doesn't go without saying that we in Greenfield have exactly what they outline as models. We looked at cahoots. I know that Deputy Chief Gordon just talked about it, but I was working for the mayor when Chief Haig came in and brought that as an example of how to structure this program that we have in Greenfield with CSO. Is it perfect? No. Is it big enough? No. It's 1 year old. We signed the contract with CSO in April of 2021. So I just want people to remember that I used to, I've been an executive director of a social service agency. You need to give programs like that involve social workers and community people and municipal governments working together. You need to give that more than 1 year to know if it's working. And so everything else aside, the other information regarding what has recently happened in terms of the verdict from Northampton and other things aside, I'm really, as a citizen, sad that we're not noticing that we have this major progressive program in its infancy in Greenfield, and now it's in danger. Sure, can we allocate other money towards that? Yeah, but not this year. I mean, in a perfect world, a budget is, of course, your priorities, but it takes time to slowly build up those other things. Those other things, like if we had more social workers generally on the staff, if we had that social worker for the Council on Aging, these are all things that are in goals for people that I know work for the city and are in leadership. So I really would like to see that happen. And I just wanted to say that as a citizen. I'm a little bit off coloring outside the lines, and I might get yelled at by my boss later, but it's okay with me.
Hey, you're a citizen, you have a right to public comment.
Yeah, that's it. The end. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else? No? Yes?
There is someone else who wants to make a comment. John McGee is in the waiting room waiting to be let in, and he would like to make a comment.
Okay.
He's
Go ahead,
online.
John.
I see his name.
He should, yep, sorry.
Apparently he's in the waiting room and needs to be let in.
He's been let in.
His name is already, he just needs to be unmuted.
Yeah, thank you for letting me in. Sorry, technological difficulties. Thanks so much. Okay, so my name is John McGee. I live on Green Street. So thank you so much to all of you for in this work. I know it's a volunteer position. This is tough stuff to sort of sort through. Thank you to the acting Chief Gordon for putting together the presentation. And no, I mean, I will just say at the outset, as someone who lives in Greenfield and has for a long time, like, even though I'm part of the Greenfield People's Budget, I don't think any of us like relish bringing hardship on people. But I do want to emphasize what Molly said. It's, I think it's a little unfortunate that with all of the discussion about cutting these officers, there has not been more discussion or just like honest engagement around what motivated the counselors to make this cut. And that is documented wrongdoing by police officers in GPD, both discrimination against Patrick Buchanan and a variety of other things that were just should have been disciplined, but never were. And it's appalling. And that is the kind of thing that causes the community to lose trust in the Greenfield Police Department. I want to be really clear about that. That it's not just like we came out of nowhere and all of a sudden, poof, we convinced people not to trust the Greenfield Police Department. It's that the Greenfield Police Department already had a problem and that we happened to come along and actually talk publicly about it when many people over the years have been too intimidated or felt too gaslighted in public forums to even talk about this stuff. So I want to talk about that first. The other thing I want to say is that, honestly, I do appreciate, thank you, Chief Gordon, for engaging with our website. I also am grateful that you have looked at what the counselors were asking for. I do think it is a very hard time to engage honestly and generously with people who disagree with you. And I just want to say that your reading of our website and our proposals was not generous and was not accurate. And similarly, your reading of counselors' statements was not accurate and taken frequently out of context. That is important to say because we have to be able to have some level of honest debate here. The last thing I'm going to say, just on the question of the co-responder that Daniel Latorno brought up, it's not a perfect program, but also, I mean, CIT, the folks who like wrote and administer the trainings in de-escalation that the police take all across Massachusetts through DMH, they themselves have said that they are opposed to embedded co-responder programs. And I understand that, like, you know, some people might think of this as like a baby step in the right direction, but there are other things that we can do in terms of not just doing things, but actually making space for things, like a civilian crisis response program. That can be much better. And the data that you relayed on Cahoots, Chief Gordon, is I understand that the 3 to 8% is what a Eugene Police Department says in terms of their number of calls that are diverted from them. But it's important to note also that Cahoots handles a full 20% of 911 calls. So there is a fair amount of interpretive range there. Anyway, that's all I'm going to say. Thank you so much for listening, and have a good night.
Thank you, John. Okay, is there anyone else? No? Going once, going twice? Okay, public comment is closed. There's no need for an executive session. I think I put in the notice that our next meeting is on the 22nd, but the chief's going to need a little more time than that. And so I just don't want to make sure I'm in a conflict with the Fire Station Building Committee on the 29th. I don't think I am. So I had proposed the 29th at 4 p.m. for our next meeting.
Sounds good.
Work for everybody? Okay,
Yes,
so be it.
Sorry, Chief, Chair, confirming that will be at City Hall in person, correct?
Right, that'll be the hybrid, correct.
So is there going to be an option for Zoom? Because
Yes,
Okay.
that'll be
so
the
I'm not
hybrid.
guaranteeing that I'm making it in person. So.
Yeah, no, that'll be the hybrid. Oh, they have room for folks at City Hall, so you can have somewhat of an in-person, but it'll also be on Zoom for, they've got it all set up. So they just didn't have it set up for today's meeting, and I don't think they'll have it set up for my Fire Station Building Committee meeting tomorrow either. But going forward, it will operate that way.
Copy.
That's my understanding from Caitlin at City Hall. So we're at adjournment. Motion for adjournment. I want to thank the chief for his.
Rick's got a quick question.
Oh, go ahead, Rick.
You're on mute, Rick. Rick, you're muted.
I can't see him. So.
Trying to unmute him.
Yeah.
There, am I
There
there?
he is. Haha, you made it.
Hey, I can't do these technical things. That's why I need the hybrid meeting. Really, the comments that we've heard from the public, I think this is great. And I think that it gives us a good kick in the pants. So we know where to go. And with that, I move we adjourn.
Okay, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Who wouldn't be? Thanks, everybody. Let's see, I have to end some stuff.
Thank you all.
See the recording.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Chat, participate, more. Pause, record. Stop.
Recording stopped.
I found it.